All right, so this is the first video for a series of Bible studies we've created entitled Steps to Christ. And the whole purpose of these studies is to help us get a better understanding of who Jesus really is, a deeper understanding of the Bible, and also a step-by-step guide to help us in order to get closer to Christ. You know, if you're following along and you'd like a free copy of our studies, feel free to drop us a message or get in contact and we'll happily send you one out for free. So for today's study, I've got Clayton alongside me.
Yo.
How's it going, man?
Good, man.
So the first study we've got is entitled, Who is Jesus? So we're going to be looking at a few stories at the life of Christ, just to help us get a better understanding, about who he really is, his character, his motives.
Yo.
Because a lot of people have a lot of, misconceptions about who they think Jesus really was. So we'll get into it with our first text for the day. So we're going to be going to John chapter 8, verses 1 to 11. So, a lot of people look at God or Christ as being some sort of, he wants to smite you. He doesn't want you to do good, and he's ready to pick you up at any point. So this is going to give us a little bit of a better understanding of, is that true or what he's really like.
Yo.
So you want to go ahead there and read that for us?
Yep. All right. So this is John chapter 8, verse 1. So it says, they all went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law of Moses, he commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, Let any one of you who is without sin cast the first stone. Again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you? She said, No one, sir. Neither do I condemn you, Jesus said. Go and sin no more.
All right, man, let's unpack this story a little bit. What stands out to you in this passage just about who Jesus was?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm thinking the most embarrassing scenarios unfolding here. You're caught in the act. Not only are you caught in the act, it's like people bring in cameras. It's like, bro, let's film her. That's the equivalent of then, it's like dragged before this crowd. But not only that, do you remember the program Cheaters?
Yeah.
Right. So there's cameras there, but this is not just your ordinary setting. It's bad enough that your partner find out you're cheating, but you're dragged before the church crowd.
Yeah.
And so of all people I expect to look down on you and just think, oh, you're such a loser, church folk are ruthless like that.
Well, they can be.
It can be tough like that. And so here you have Jesus within a church setting really demonstrating what God is like, and there you are filled with shame. And I know I've been there, it's like filled with shame, caught in the act. And you just feel like the ground should just swallow me up. And he comes to her rescue. Bro. It's incredible to think someone could rescue you when you're in such a situation where you own the guilt. Like you're not blaming anyone in this setting. It's like, it's my fault, definitely. Yeah. And he came to her rescue in compassion for what she had done, even though he didn't endorse it.
Yeah, that's big, man.
It's good.
Because you think about, like you said, if someone sort of brings something to light and you are the one who makes the decision, everyone's looking at you waiting for you to make it. You sort of go with the crowd normally.
Totally.
You're more like leaning towards the crowd. When Christ was killed, the governor was going towards the crowd because he didn't want to make it
even though he knew it wasn't right.
Even though he knew it wasn't right. But even though he knew what she had done was wrong, and the crowd wanted him to probably go through and make the ruling, he goes the total opposite to actually save her and to protect her. Because that's who he is, He's not looking for opportunities to try and get rid of you or punish you. He's looking for opportunities where he can save you.
That's right.
From your predicaments,
That's
So,
right.
Yeah, it just shows you a completely different angle of who he was.
Totally. Because, people portray God to be this sort of person's watching out to smite you at every opportunity, and here it's like, wow. He sees the weakness of humanity. And because I'm thinking, if I, when I was sleeping around and all of that, Like, I can't say it was a mistake. It was no mistake.
But you'd say that, I'd be like, oh, it was a mistake.
It was a mistake, you know, I didn't mean to, bro.
You know deep down it was definitely not a mistake.
It was not a mistake.
Yeah.
And this woman is not even trying to cover up a situation. She's like, okay, yeah, guilty.
Yeah.
You know, but he recognizes that, look, humanity is frail and weak and sinful, and the purpose of him coming is for people like us who are stuck in sin and need a way out, you know. And so he showed her compassion in her sin, and she wasn't trying to cover it up. And I think that shows the character of God towards sinners, you know, that he's moved with compassion, just seeing us just shameful, you know, embarrassed, wallowing in our misery, you know, and he's like, hey, you know, I don't condemn you. That's deep, bro.
It is, man. And like you said, you know, he really had the right to pick up the first stone.
Totally.
He said, if none of you have sinned, you know, you pick up that first stone, basically. But he was the one who had the right to do it and could have done it out of anyone there, but he's the one who chose not to. And it's like, when you have the opportunity, when you have the options to either choose mercy or, you know, punish someone, you know, it's all in your hands. And it's like, nah, I'm going to take the option of showing her mercy. Because, you know, Jesus is a second chance person, you know.
It's incredible, man.
Second, third, fourth, fifth chances, you know. He gives us many opportunities. So it's like, that really stands out to me, man. Yeah.
And, you know, I think to myself, you know, the contrast between what we're like, you know, it's like, bro, anytime people find out dirt on anyone, it's like, bro, did you hear? Oh, we're always spreading the dirt. We're always ready to throw shade. And here Jesus is doing the opposite. You know, he's like innocent, guiltless, sinless. I've got heaps on my list, and yet I'm still ready to condemn someone else. And yet the one who's most worthy, like you're saying, you know, is the one who shows the greatest compassion. When we should have more compassion, it's like, bro, I know what that's like, man. Terrible being there. And yet we just take the opportunity to squash each other, you know.
Exactly, man. Exactly. All right, we'll move on to our next passage. We'll go on to, John chapter 1, verses 1 to 4, and then verse 14 as well. So, I mean, I guess let's see who Jesus is, you know, in a sense of, you know, there's Buddha or Muhammad or all these different gods, you know, what makes Jesus the one, you know, in a sense.
All right. John 1, verse 1 to 4, mine says... It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made through him, and without him was nothing made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And then verse 14 says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as the glory of the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth.
All right, man. What sort of lessons do you learn about Jesus in those passages?
I suppose, you know, like you were saying about, you know, who is he? Because, you know, the life that he lived, there's been many good people. The death that he died, lots of people crucified before, you know. So why is his death so special? Why is his life so special? And here it's like, actually, because unlike all the others, this was God coming to become part of his creation. So in terms of, you know, credentials of what he said being trustworthy, being credible, being authoritative, being, you know, worthy to be followed, his death being an example, it's like, if not God, then who, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, of all people that could rescue humanity and give an example, I think the fact that Christ is God just gives weight to everything about him.
Yeah, and it really, I think, highlights that love that Christ has. Because, like you said, you know, when you're at the top, most people aren't looking at the people at the bottom. When you're in your highest position, they just want to stay up there.
Yeah.
And he's like the creator of the universe. He was there from the beginning, but he decides, you know, I want to come down and be with the lowest of the lowest of these sinners, these people who don't even want to know me, you know, they hate me in a sense. And a lot of times, but I want to spend time with him. I want to save those people, deep. You know.
Bro, you know, it's so deep that I think of all the cultures in the world, you know. Like, I remember one time we were at Ruakaka, you know, we were at the beach just staring at the stars, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, it's a mystery, you know, and you kind of see why all the cultures used to have a concept of God, but you can't unravel it. You know, you just see the splendor and you think, man, it's a mystery of all mysteries. So then people worship the sun, they worship the moon, they worship the stars, they make elephant images of God, they make this statue or the tree. And so people are trying to grab hold of God, and yet in becoming a man, it's like it's not actually the physical form of God that is really important, because that's what people are really trying to grasp. What people most misrepresent is not what he looks like, but his character. So he becomes like us to show us that, look, it's not the form that matters, but the character of love that he demonstrated, because it says we beheld his glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth, you know. And so I think the biggest thing is, what is God like? That's the biggest, most relevant part of God that he wants us to know. It's like, what am I like? Because that's really what getting to know someone is. You know, that's really what you fall in love with, rather than, you know, look at him, he's got some biceps, you know.
Too big, man.
You know, you can tell I've been working out. But, you know, that's really it. You fall in love with someone because of who they are, what are they like, you know, rather than their power or their money or whatever, you know.
Exactly. That's deep, man. All right, anything else to say on that one? No? All right, we'll move on to our next passage. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 11 and verses 1 to 6. So basically, you know, in the story, you're wondering, who, you know, is Jesus really the one that was promised to come? Is he the one that's going to come and save us? You know, so we're gonna unpack this question in these verses.
All right, so mine says, after Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, he went on from there to teach and preach in the towns of Galilee. When John, who was in prison, heard about the deeds of Jesus, he sent his disciples to ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else?" Jesus replied, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Blessed is he who shall not be ashamed of me."
All right, man. What can we learn about Jesus from you know, these passages?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, you know, it says, "Are you the one that should come, or do we look for another?" So obviously, this wasn't just a surprise arrival. You know, the Jews have been waiting for a Messiah, and I think every nation had some expectation of a deliverer, you know, because there's so much suffering, there's so much persecution, so much injustice. And so people are looking for a deliverer, which is why others have, you know, Hercules and Zeus and all these superheroes. You know, people have that desire for someone who's going to make things right. And they're tired of being disappointed by politicians. It's like, okay, you're definitely not a superhero. And so because John read the scriptures, he knew about the promised one. You know, he's also anticipating for the one who's going to come and deliver them. But, you know, people are thinking, okay, we're tired of slavery under the Romans. Are you the one that's going to come and slay the dragon, push them out? And then Jesus is like, go tell John what you see. You know, blind people are receiving their sight. You know, the poor are having the gospel preached to them. The dead are raised. And, you know, I think that's really it, that the difference that the Messiah was supposed to make. You know, people were just wanting external changes, you know, change my situation, make me get a bit more money.
Yeah.
But here he was actually making a difference for people where it mattered the most. And that's what demonstrated who he was. He wasn't like parading as, you know, on a horse or, you know, flaunting who he was.
Yeah.
That's really wasn't not what was going to demonstrate who he was. It was, making a difference for humanity, you know, rescuing us from our suffering.
You know, that's an interesting point you made. It's he was actually going and doing the work. You know, it's not like I'm just going to come here and tell you how good I am, tell you what I can do. Because if we look at politicians today, you know, they make all these promises. They talk all these good big words, fancy words, nice words for people to hear, and it's like then they never fulfill any of it. You know, they don't even follow through with their words. But Christ is saying, you know, I didn't come here to be praised and be up on this high regard in front of society, but I actually came here to do a mission, you know, which was to, you know, heal the blind, preach the word to people who need to hear it, connect with those who are downtrodden, who are lost. That's my mission. And he actually goes and does the work, because he says to John, you know, tell them what you hear and what you see of me. because I'm actually doing what I've come to do. You know, I'm not just talking it, but I'm actually doing it in action. And that's his whole mission, you know. Yeah.
That's deep, bro. Yeah. No, I'm just thinking with what you're saying, you know, like we just had elections here. People are campaigning, and the way politicians campaign, it's like we go and we kiss little babies. We're seen in the schools, you know. So we only do that during campaigning, and then once we're in power, you never see them doing that again. Whereas here you have Jesus. He's not campaigning, you know, and yet the life he's living is a campaign in itself to say, look, he is the promised one. I am the promised king based on what I am doing, the life I'm living, not just for the sake of campaigning. He lived like that all the way through, you know?
Yeah.
And it gives us a glimpse of, okay, this is what the kingdom of God will be like. You know, this is what God is like. Rather than politicians, to be honest, you know.
It is, man. And yeah, it's not for the riches or the glory or anything like that. Because even as Christians, you know, it's easy to get caught up in prosperity or, you know, if I follow God, he's going to bless me and give me a house, a car, a good job, all this sort of stuff. But Christ is saying, that's not what I've come here for. I want to give you riches in heaven, you know, and give you your eternal life. It's more than just the stuff on this earth. Yeah.
Bro, you know what you're saying even? I'm thinking like all leadership, every teacher, like the biggest downfall of teachers everywhere, leaders, is saying and not doing. You can promote the great religious principles of we should love one another, but people seldom see people doing what they're preaching, you know, walking the talk, people say. And for the first time here, you see a leader not only talk, in fact, before he talks it, he walks it. So then his talk just adds to what he's already doing. It's like, man, this is the real deal, you know.
It's unheard of, man.
It's unheard of.
We need some more politicians like that today. All right, let's move on, eh? All right, so our next passage, we're going to be reading Philippians chapter 2.
All right.
Verses 5 to 8.
5 to 8, all right. Okay, it says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and taking the form of a servant." And then it says, "Being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross."
All right, man. So what do you learn about the character of Christ, you know, in a sense, from these verses?
I suppose, you know, in all my experience, now I'm from Zimbabwe, you know, and people always want to climb up the ladder, like a promotion.
Yeah.
People wrestle for church positions. I want to be made deacon, elder, pastors, like a kingly role. And so people are all about climbing the ladder, and people respect people because of their degrees. People don't want to be called by their first name if they've got a PhD. You got to call me doctor so-and-so. Like, those things are a big deal for people over there. Even church elders need to be called elder such and such, you know. And here you have the King of Kings, the highest authority in the whole universe, saying, hey, look, I'm not even interested in a title. Like, I'm actually not even about that. I'm going to come and be a servant, you know. And bro, it's like Undercover Boss, you know, the ultimate undercover boss, where he wasn't even going to flaunt the fact that he's God. He didn't even go around saying that, you know. He was just a servant going about what he needed to do to make a difference, and for no show. You know, it's like, I'm not doing this to be seen. I'm here to make a difference for humanity, you know. Because once you say I'm God, then it's like, okay, now we're going to be interested because you said you're God. He actually deliberately chose to be a poor servant. And yet we still worship him as God because it came out how godly he was through the love that he showed. You know?
I think because even when he was on earth, you know, if people, like you said, if they had said, oh, this is God, really, and, you know, everyone was really hyping him up, he would have got a massive crowd following him just because of the title that he had, you know, that he was God. But a lot of times he said to people, you know, don't tell them what I did for you.
Done,
You know, I want to just keep it quiet here, you know, but I've impacted your life specifically. So that wasn't his motives, you know, but and I think even as Christians, you know, it says, let this mind be in you, which was in Christ Jesus. Like, as Christians, it's easy for us to want to climb that ladder as well.
Totally.
Even in the church, it's
Totally.
like, oh, I want to be like the pastor, or I want to be the elder, or something like that. And you want to have that rank where people talk about, oh, you're that guy, or you preach or whatever.
People notice you're the center of attention.
And it's like, we need to have the same mind that Christ did when he was on earth. We're not trying to climb that ladder, but we're meant to be serving, our other humans, our neighbors, loving them, caring about them just the way that Christ did. I don't know, just a thought.
Bro, it's deep. It's deep. Because, even in terms of social relation, I'm just thinking, like, even though there's no apartheid in New Zealand, but there is there's a category of people that just don't mix. Like rich and poor just don't really hang out. And, like the thought that here, the highest of the high is down there, seen as a servant. So imagine, I don't know who's some big shot as Kim.com or whoever, Chris Luxon, sweeping, mopping, cleaning. It's unheard of to even imagine them doing an ordinary job, mingling with ordinary folk down the bottom. They kind of are high up there, celebrities. They don't mix with ordinary folks, and so here you have the demonstration of Christ showing that, we don't find our value in what we do, because, once you're a CEO, now you think you're super important, whereas if I'm a cleaner, I'm a nobody, whereas here he's like, look, I'm God. I'm no less God just because I'm a servant, which is incredible because, when I was at New World doing trolleys, my first few weeks, the first week I was embarrassed. I was like, bro, let me wear my mask over my eyes. I don't want anyone to notice me.
Yeah.
Because you feel like it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
That who you are has to do with what you do.
Yeah.
But who you are is internal, and it's got nothing to do with whether you're a cleaner or a sweeper or a CEO.
Yeah. Yeah. It's deep, man. All right, should we move on?
Yeah.
To the next passage. All right. So John chapter 13.
All right.
And we're reading verse 12 to 17.
So when he had washed their feet, taken his garments and sat down again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me Master and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them."
All right, man. What lessons can we learn here about Jesus?
Like people struggle, we all struggle with self-worth, an image. And so we dress up, everyone wants a better car, a better house, anything that can outwardly draw attention, and even to appear rich. Everyone wants to look like they're wealthy, keeping up with the Joneses, so that people don't look at you like you're lower class, And yet here Jesus does the work that the lowest of the low in society did, as an example of humility. That, look, I think to myself, I grew up, and the role of a man was like, bro, you don't do dishes, you don't change nappies, you don't do any housework. And yet here's Jesus, higher than any man claims to be, and he's serving. He's washing people's feet, the work of a servant. And he didn't find that as degrading at all or embarrassing. So to me, it's like, wow, man, who do I think I am? And so, sure, my wife needs help with any task, cleaning the toilet, changing the nappy, no big deal, I'm not too special to do that job. It doesn't take away from me being a man in any way. And so I should be willing to serve wherever it's needed, but because there's so much insecurity about people's perception of who I am, so, oh, bro, I don't want to be seen doing that. And Jesus, who was God, was willing to do it. It tells me there's no work too embarrassing, nothing he wasn't willing to do to rescue us, to show us he loves us, to serve us. And so, for me, it's like, okay, bro, suck it up. Eat humble pie and get on with it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like people in society say, if you do this, you're a loser, or,
Yeah.
shouldn't do that if I'm a man or whatever. And it's like, when you look what Christ did, that gives you the attributes of what a real man was
Totally.
to be,
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what a man should be. Like, Christ did it all,
Bro.
And that's what our examples is and what we should be aiming for, instead of looking at other people who are like, I wouldn't even do that for those people, Especially like these disciples that were with him, a lot of them were fishermen. They didn't have PhDs or degrees.
Yeah, no way.
They were the lowest of the low. And they didn't even want to wash his feet, They were too busy fighting with each other. And it's like, he's like, I'm going to go and do this for them. And I think there's no other way you can do this unless you truly love them, right?
Totally.
Because I think it really comes back to that sense of love that he had for humanity. Because otherwise, if you don't really love someone, you're not really going to want to help them out or do anything for
That's
them,
deep, man. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you really hit the nail on the head there, because you think of every facet of society. If the motive for doing what you do is love, then there is nothing too degrading, because your motives are not to be seen or anything.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I'm doing it out of love. And I think, parents wash kids' spoiled bottoms. They don't feel any embarrassment for doing that, And other people work for old folks to clean them up. And, if there is love there, it's like, it's not a big deal, But if you vomit, bro, it's like, bro, clean up your mess. Somehow there's so much pride invested in the things that you do. But if there really is love, there's nothing too embarrassing to do for someone you care about.
Exactly. And that's who Jesus was, eh?
Who
He was
Jesus
love
was,
embodied
man.
in the person, It's massive. All right, man, we better move on to our last one,
All
just
right.
because we're getting a bit short of time
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But let's move on. So our last passage, we're going to read from 1 Peter chapter 2, 21 to 25.
All right. Bro, I could say so much about that, eh?
You could. Anything else you want to add before we move on?
Nothing. All right.
Well,
Here, I'll
add
read,
something
I'll read,
if you
I'll-
want.
I'm bursting, bro. I'm bursting. Yeah. All right. It says, 1 Peter 2, verse 21 to 25. It says, "For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving an example for us that we should follow his steps, who committed no sin, nor was deceit found in his mouth, who when he was reviled did not revile in return, when he suffered he did not threaten, but committed himself to him who judges righteously, who himself bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. For you were like sheep going astray, but have now returned to the shepherd and bishop of your souls."
All right, man, what sort of stands out to you in that passage?
Bro, I was guessing you were going to say that. Eh? So, like, of all the examples we've seen of Jesus, all the societal standards that we put up that, bro, you can't be seen doing that.
Yeah.
He's flipping it upside down to say, look, God would do that. He loves you enough that he would give up his throne to become a man, to become a servant, even to die. So if God would do that, who do I think I am? And here it's like, wow, when Jesus was, when people cursed at him or mocked him or persecuted him, he could have clicked his fingers and zapped them.
Exactly.
You're gone. He could have retaliated. And yet he didn't, because he loved them. He wasn't quick to anger. He wasn't willing to revenge. Out of love for them, he blessed them when they cursed him. He still did good for them, even though they were hurling curses and abuses at them.
Bro.
And I mean, it just shows me that, man, there's so much pride within human hearts. Because, bro, if someone, we were together in the car the other day, that dude, he was like, Angus as at me because there's an accident there and I'm going slow. And inside I was like,
You just want to,
But it's like Jesus had worse done to him.
Yeah.
And yet, he even said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And so it's like, man, leaving us an example. Don't follow me, man. There's the example,
Exactly. Yeah, man, I think, throughout this study, all of these passages really highlight who Christ really is, from what the perspective of who he was to what, it really says that he's all about.
Yeah.
And I think, one point you really want people to know is that it doesn't matter, if you've done things in the past or where you've been or what you've done, but you can come to Christ at any time.
Yeah.
And he's not going to condemn you or push you away or punish you for what you've done. If you have a sincere heart, he wants you to come to him because he wants to show you mercy, he wants to show you love. And that's who Jesus really is, you know. Nothing of anything else. That's really all he is about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can say more to what you said, just that, to add to that, the greatest attribute of God is not that he's powerful, created the world, all of those things, but it's that his love. And that's really the element that he wants people to know the most, that he is love and he loves us. Because all the other attributes, don't build relationship.
Yeah.
But love is that's the strongest bond you can have,
Yeah. All right, man. Good chatting with you. We'll wrap it up there.
That was good, man.
Until the next one, man.
Awesome.
Sweet.